Not Quite Right features discussions that are unfiltered and uncensored and may include themes that are inappropriate for younger listeners. Also, I swear a lot.
Something doesn't seem quite right.
Welcome to Not Quite Right. My name's Ed.
And I'm Amanda.
It's the Shortlist episode.
Woohoo! We're here.
In this episode, we will announce our wildcard winners and read out all of our shortlisted stories and find out who will be the winner of the January 2025 Not Quite Right prize for flash fiction.
I can't wait for them to find out.
It's painful for us too because we get questions on Twitter and Blue Sky, but you know, we've got to be tight-lipped.
That's it. And I should point out too that of course we have prize money to go to these winners. We don't like to spoil it. So someone actually emailed us asking like, do the winners already know? Like, is it already too late kind of thing? And actually, no, the winners find out when you do.
That's right. We don't tell people in advance.
No, we did one time, which was last year for the final round because we had to pull together the anthology. Yeah. But I don't think we'll even need to do that this year because there's sort of less logistics involved. So, yeah, the winners don't know until you do. So, on that note, because we have to dish out the prize money and so on, once you've won a prize and you're aware of it, please feel free to email us and let us know because we can kick off the prize winning distribution at that time. I don't like to sort of contact anyone in advance because I want you to have the joy of hearing your name read out on the episode. But anyway, that's just admin shit. Come on, let's get to the main event.
Let's get to it. Well, before we get into it, this wine for our episode is sponsored by Naked Wines. And we are drinking, well, we're still drinking the rabbit and spaghetti from the long list
I know,
episode.
We did hold back. In fact, come on, top her up.
Yeah, let's get really into it. I'm already really into it. But it's now 4:20, so well and truly an acceptable time to be drinking alcohol.
Is it? Is that the time, 4:20?
It's better than 11 o'clock or whenever it was when we started.
It's not quite 5 p.m, but it is 5 p.m. somewhere. It's be 5 p.m. in New Zealand.
Anything's acceptable on a Sunday, isn't it?
Yeah.
But with that, we'll get into the wildcards first. So our wildcards, these are our like extra picks. I've got a wildcard, Amanda's got a wildcard, and
everybody gets a wildcard. No, this is not Oprah.
It's not Oprah. We wildcard recipients get $100.
Not bad.
Yeah, and these are ones that we just wanted to specifically mention, give them a bit of extra recognition because there's something about their story that we liked and they may not have made the long list or they may have made the long list. It's just a little extra bonus that we each choose. So who's your wildcard pick this round?
So I went with one that resonated with me from the beginning, but it wasn't one that ended up on the long list. It was very, very close. So again, like we said this in the last episode, but just because your story didn't make the long list doesn't mean it wasn't a great story. And I thought this was a great story. And the main reason I thought it was great was because of the character development. It was a great character. And the story was Mousefucker by R.C. Barajas, whose name is familiar to those of you who've been following for a while. Didn't make the long list this comp, but in fact came 5th place in July last year. So good company for those of you who also didn't find your names on the long list this round. But this one stood out to me. I mean, look, I'm developing a reputation for being obsessed with swearing, right? And it's not really about that. There is an element of shock value there. But the character that this story is about is what got me. And the character is an exterminator, a mouse exterminator who has earned that nickname basically. But the character reminded me a bit of Alma Whitaker from The Signature of All Things by Elizabeth Gilbert. And I don't know if you've
No, I'm not familiar with that.
So Elizabeth Gilbert was famous for Eat, Pray, Love and in fact has just been touring Australia with like a in-person event, but wrote this book and it was very, very different to the other books that she'd written. Anyway, the character was very compelling and I just sort of saw some similarities in the character. Anyway, I guess the character really resonated with me and that's why I think it's such a fundamental aspect of storytelling.
Yeah, and this is a story that we both liked a lot, but it didn't quite make the cut for the long list, which, I mean, goes to show just how competitive it is, especially on that cusp. You know, there's probably a few dozen stories that we liked that didn't quite make the cut. Yeah,
you have to make the call somehow. And if you just thought of your criteria a little differently, the chips might have fallen in the other direction. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, congratulations, RC. We'll be sending you your prize money.
Congratulations. And my pick for wildcard was Mr. Clarence's Secret Garden by Philippa Freegard. And this one did make the long list. But I think we disagreed a little bit about this story, about, I guess, what the intention was. So it's a story basically about what a child sees but doesn't understand, right? So that's leaning into the anti-prompt. And in this case, it's a relationship between the child's mother and a teacher. And it's told from the perspective, and I guess this is where we disagree, right? Who's the perspective character and where it's being told from. But I think it's being told from the perspective of one of the adults, one of the other teachers in the school who come to understand what's actually taken place through these unknowing revelations, little bits of information that the child gives away. So I thought it was a well-constructed story and I felt it deserved a little bit of extra recognition.
So congratulations, Philippa.
And so with that, we are into the shortlist proper.
In sixth place, we have Visiting You 1 Year Later by Chris Schnebelen. I imagine your alarm waking you, a shrill buzz rattling your walls and clawing your eardrums. Or maybe you've changed it to something more serene, like birds tweeting against a gentle river's flow. Or maybe there is no alarm anymore. You're sitting up, arms stretching to the sky, every vertebra in your spine popping up your back, taking turns. You're grabbing your phone, checking your email, mostly filled with spam from all the online stores you've shopped. Maybe you've unsubscribed from those emails. Maybe you don't grab your phone. Maybe you don't get out of bed. You're moving into the kitchen, a fresh cup of dark roast coffee with a pinch of sugar the way you start your day. Maybe you started using cream. Maybe you drink blonde roast, black. Maybe you drink tea now. Maybe you don't go to the kitchen first at all, instead starting your morning with a shower. Maybe you don't have a ritual anymore. Maybe you're still in bed. It's your day off, so you're wearing something casual. An oversized Coldplay t-shirt, your favourite band. Maybe you wear tank tops now or oversized sweaters. Maybe your favourite band is something different. The Strokes, Gorillaz, Poolside. Maybe you listen to country now. Pop, electronica. Maybe it isn't your day off. Maybe you have a different job. Maybe you have no job. Maybe you're still in bed. You're fingering through your jewellery. You choose the ring I proposed to you with, the one white gold band set with a 14-carat diamond. Maybe it's the ruby one your grandmother gave you. Maybe it's a different one I don't know of. Maybe you have more rings than I remember. Maybe you sold them all. Maybe you're still in bed. You're doing that thing you've always done where you stare in the mirror and squish your unruly hair, draw your hand around your waist, stare at the length of your neck. There is no one there to tell you that you look beautiful. Maybe there is, and they're holding you now as they whisper what I used to into your ear. Maybe there isn't, and you dwell on the little things that never mattered. Maybe you're still in bed. You're hearing the doorbell ring. You're considering what to do. Is it your mum? Jehovah's Witness? Me? Is it worth answering? Should you pretend you're not home? Maybe you're not home. Maybe you're still in bed. I'm ringing your doorbell. I've been standing for an hour wondering if I should even be there. I've bitten my cuticles clean off, the edges of my nails red and raw. My ears are burning. No matter how much I focus on my breathing, the air can't keep in my lungs. I've memorised every smudge and every piece of scuff on your welcome mat. It's the only thing I'm sure about you anymore. I'm hoping you're still in bed. You're not. You're opening the door.
So congratulations, Chris, on your story. This is one that we spoke about, I guess alluded to in the long list episode, right? The idea of ending your story with the opening door, right? And that potentially being a problem. So this one has come into the shortlist and made 6th place. So it obviously wasn't a problem for this story. And I have to say for me, like this one broke a few rules, you
Yeah.
know, like we are introduced to a character whose name we don't know.
We don't know anything about them.
Yeah, and we go through this series of questions and we don't really know anything about the subject or the object really of the story or the setting. And we get to maybe 3/4 of the way through that it becomes clear that, you know, that it's a person waiting at the door for the other person. And often when I read a story like this, I'm a little bit thrown by that. It's one of those, you know, is this an unearned twist? We're thrown into a situation that we didn't think we were in. I didn't find that with this story. I felt that when we got to that moment, I was actually invested in what happened next.
And we had the title as a clue too. So that probably set up a little bit. No, I agree. I feel like that emotional resonance is being developed and there is a sense of character, the other character, I suppose, that's being drawn. And that perception of that character starts to give you some insight into the perspective character.
Yeah, and we do get some clues, obviously, to the relationship. There's the ring, there's the whole idea of what I used to know about you that maybe has changed now. So we have an idea of time passing and something has happened that has brought this person back, you know, a year later. We don't know exactly what's happened. We don't know exactly the backstory there. But I think there's enough in that scenario that's been built up there that it's almost like it's a universal experience. It's the experience of putting yourself out there and not knowing really what the outcome of this is going to be. Like he's at her doorstep.
You say
have
he.
I was going to say, have I assumed the genders?
You have assumed the genders. We have, I believe, a female character is the one inside. But, well, that's implied just by certain things about them, like a ring with a diamond and,
That's right.
you know, that sort of thing. But, it's not ever stated whether the perspective character is male or female.
That's right. So we have a character, I guess, putting themselves out there. They obviously have come to some realization over the last year and they're there to find out what is going to happen and they've had the courage to do so. So that's something that we can, as an emotional core, really connect with.
And I think that was a strength of this one was the theme. And, you know, when I talk about Poe's single effect and all that sort of thing, I think everything in this story was working towards that theme, which was hope. And so we're getting this building sense of hope. You can sense that hope, but like the risk, you know, that risk of the hope. Like, what am I doing? Like, what if all this is wrong? Like, what if my gut feeling is wrong, basically? And I think that is, as you say, incredibly relatable. And that is what is deeply resonant about this story. And, you know, it is very interior, right? And that's something that we challenge often. But, you know, it's kept very dynamic because the interior thoughts are not just these wistful thoughts of, oh, what could have been. It's very grounded in action. And even if that's imagined action as opposed to actual action, we're still seeing progression. We're seeing movement through the story, you know. And I think that's probably what makes it feel less interior. Even though it very much is. We're just getting someone's thoughts as they're standing on the doorstep. Yeah,
you're right. And that's another rule that's being broken there. But I think it's the details there that are chosen to express something about the character and to explain a little bit of that backstory without being explicit about it and saying, well, a year ago, because there is that temptation, right, of setting up the story with, I imagine your alarm waking you, you're sitting up, you know, what are you doing? And then taking a break and going backstory for a paragraph and saying, oh, a year ago I did blah, blah, blah. And the author resists this temptation and really sticks to their formula here. And I think that's a really a strong approach because, you know, going into that backstory would have taken you out of it.
Yeah. And it's revealed through detail. So a line that stands out to me, apart from the engagement ring, which sets something up, there's the line, they're saying maybe there's not someone else there.
Yeah.
And you dwell on the little things that never mattered. Okay. And so you get the sense that they've broken up because of little things.
Yeah.
And therefore there may still be hope yet. And I think that's really well done. Like that subtextual stuff, like where you get it pretty clearly, but it's not in your face. And I think something that we haven't mentioned yet, but which is a key feature of this is that repetition and that sort of the cadence of it. Like it's just almost poetic in the way that it's delivered. And I think that works here. You know, we talk about how we don't love poetry as a gimmick.
Yeah.
But what I do love is rhythm and a story that just feels satisfying in the way that it's told. I think this story achieves that the repetition of maybe you're still in bed. But you said before like that this story ends with an open door and that wasn't an issue in this case. I actually tend to disagree because I think that had it not been for that open ending, this story might have gone a little bit higher on the list. But just from my perspective, it was one that we didn't know where it quite fit.
Yeah.
But you made the shortlist. So obviously you're doing some things right there. So take that or leave it as you will.
Yeah, I think you can always strive for kind of more impact, and definitely it does leave you as a reader with a little bit of a ambiguous ending. Like, what are the answers to all these questions that you've raised through the story? So it may have helped to at least resolve some of that. But at the same time, I think what you've set out to do here is to write this exact story, as in you've focused on the expectation and the hope and
not on the knowing and the result.
Yeah, that's right. And the stressing about, well, will she or won't she? And I think you've nailed that angle. So well done, Chris, on your shortlisting.
Congratulations.
Okay, so let's move on to the next story.
And in 5th place, we have Love in the Time of Flatulence by Greg Schmidt. I slump into my car and fart. A ripping release from another day of moronic managers and meandering meetings. And another day I didn't bloody talk to him. For weeks I've been trying to find the courage to ask Jason out, to woo him with some perfect piece of conversation. In the lunchroom today, I had my chance. "Hi, Ellie," he said to me, stirring his tea. Our eyes met, and my confidence evaporated. My voice went with it, and all I could manage was a mumbled, "Hey." An awkward pause followed, punctuated by the ting-ting of his spoon against the cup. Unable to fill the void, I just left. Now I start the car to leave this day behind, when there's a tap at the window. It's Jason, making a motion for me to wind it down. I do so, nervous and excited. It's exactly then that the results of my earlier gaseous emission arise, and a horrid stench hits my nostrils. Jason leans in closer and opens his mouth to speak. I'm mortified and quickly try to raise the window, but I'm too late. His lips curl and his face twists as the odious odour wafts through the half-open window to greet him head-on. He coughs and holds the back of his hand to his mouth. "Oh God," I sputter. "I'm sorry." He begins, but I panic and close the window, sealing me in with my dread creation. I speed out of there, leaving him just a vision in the rear view. The next day passes, and I manage to avoid Jason at work. What would I say to him anyway? Any mystery, any allure, will have dissipated with the lingering foulness of a fart to the face. I breathe a sigh of relief when I enter the lift to leave. But as the doors close, someone darts between them to join me. Jason, as fate would have it. I shuffle my feet and stare down at my phone. The awkwardness from the lunchroom yesterday surrounds us again, and we do not speak as the lift descends. Suddenly, the silence is shattered by the unmistakable trumpeting of a fart. It ends with an upturned squeak, as if posing a question. When I look to the source, Jason is grinning at me. "So, Ellie," he says, as if nothing had escaped his ass a few seconds prior. "You want to grab a drink after work sometime?" I'm equal parts embarrassed and dumbfounded. Did you just ask me out by farting on me?" He raises an eyebrow. "You started it." It's a fair point, and I can't stifle a chuckle that comes from within. "Is that a yes?" he asks. I'd been so worried about the perfect way to ask him out, but perhaps it never needed to be perfect. In response, I cock my hip and let out the tiniest toot. We laugh, and when the lift doors open, we step out into the fresh air together.
So well done, Greg. And some of you might remember Greg from our very first inaugural competition back in 2023. where Greg finished in 6th place.
Mm.
Also on the shortlist with it has to be said, a thematically similar story, right? About a mysterious Scotsman in a toilet and the world covered in shite. So bit of a winning formula there for Greg.
Yeah. But look, it's not just about fart gags, and
It's not
toilet.
just about farting.
I mean, but that's not really what appeals. I mean, again, there's that element of surprise that comes in, the shock value, and those will get you far in terms of getting judges' attention. But that's not all this is, right? This is a very well-constructed little romance.
Yeah.
It's got all the right elements there. I know from my notes in the initial reading, I just was like, ha, 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 ha. And then I said, hilarious, no notes. And I mean, I'm sure I can come up with notes, like if I'm really pressed, but there really weren't any flaws here. Like it really delivered on every point. We had our character development, we had the rising and falling action, we had everything that you need in a story.
Yeah, we had the little squeak at the end.
That was really a standout, I think. Like it's very clever, like giving the fart a personality now, but it's got a voice. But it's also conflict, right? It presents conflict. And I think that was one thing that's done really well in this story is that the farting is kind of just introducing this conflict and this confusion at every stage, which ultimately becomes what brings them together.
Yeah.
And that's a well-constructed romance. Now, Greg was one of the ones who was writing out of genre.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure that...
I think the farts are well in genre.
I feel like that's in his wheelhouse. But yeah, so well-constructed romance. So those of you who were perhaps challenging yourselves to write romance, maybe you're a little bit better at it than you realise. Maybe it's a strength.
Has anyone ever asked you out with a fart? is this a realistic scenario?
Well, usually the farting comes later in the relationship. I guess it's just a reminder too that stories don't always have to be serious to resonate. You can resonate for other reasons. And comedy's great. Comedy's risky because you're not always going to find the right audience. And Greg's clearly found the right audience with us. But at the same time, like it's a romance as well. And when that's well constructed, then that's going to tick the boxes for a lot of people who are reading it. And I did just really love that ending too, stepping out in the fresh air together. Like it's just funny, but also like a great note to end it on.
Yeah. So well done, Greg, and congratulations on 5th place.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we're sort of cementing a personality here. we keep rewarding this, like what's going to happen? Pavlovian response. All right, so moving on.
In 4th place, Chat Room 523 by E.C. Heath. Margot's quilt muzzles the notifications whine. User 9837213, 1:21 a.m. You really have a dick? TTG XRL 444, 1:25 a.m. Yeah. User 9837213, 1:25 a.m. Hard to believe. You're so beautiful. She considers telling him it isn't so far-fetched for a beautiful girl to have a dick. Decides against it. User 9837213, 1:27 a.m. I've got one too. Attachment, img 9330.jpg. It's no work of art. An imagined Seba conducts critique, dissecting its composition. The subject's asymmetric curve, rapping on her square glasses as if to refocus the picture, frizzy hair bobbing like an independent body. She dubbed Margot's last piece unruly, recalcitrant. Margot supposes her teacher might label the grainy image dusting her headboard with blue light evocative, but of what she can't verbalise. What did Seba say 2 classes ago about Ezra's work? The one of condom wrappers? Unbeautiful. Yes, that's it. User 9837213, 1:29 a.m. You want to come over and have some fun? The cat sitting on the stoop is statue still, collarless. She hopes it isn't his, or at least, if it is, he'll keep it outside. Climbing the steps, sweeping right, steering clear, yellow eyes tracking. User 9837213's place is a shadowy thing, sprouting from the snow-gutted sidewalk. No moon out tonight. What kind of omen is that? Such superstitious speak reminds her of yesterday's horoscope. Your big transition will soon end. She laughs all over again, her real laugh, sort of husky, not the affected bleat donned around classmates, around Ezra. Margot finds the doorbell and a note. She looks closer. It's the reverse of an envelope, crudely taped to the adjacent siding. Do not ring, it reads, in blocky, fat-tipped Sharpie. She obeys, knocks thrice, unzips her coat. An owl cries. The door opens, unexpectedly quiet. From what Margot can make out, he isn't unattractive. She typically enjoys guys like this, tolerates them at least. These used car men, stubbled, scruffy, with decent mileage despite the dented doors. But she can tell now. The cat is his. He has that same look in his eyes, even worse when he smiles, like he knows something she doesn't. User 9837213, 3:42 AM. Had fun tonight. We should do it again sometime. Margot opens 3 different social media apps, despite not consciously wanting to. Muscle memory. She's training herself to stop clicking on them. She read an article about it, or watched a video. But the impulse is always irresistible during these stretches. This yet to feel whole again stage. She switches to the camera instead. A practice the article, video, recommended. Self-reconnection or something. Her reflection is murky, a mosaic of pixels the colour of beer bottles. Smudged mascara, purpling neck. A voice crowing in the back of her mind. Poor thing. She snaps a picture, not exactly knowing why. Maybe she can use it for something. Submit it to Seba for critique. What would Ezra think? Unbeautiful, she remembers, repeating it to herself, letting the word erode a smooth canyon through her memory, one she can traverse until she's through the dormitory doors. TTG LXR 444, 8:51 AM. Sure.
So congratulations, EC. This was one that we probably disagreed quite strongly on. The one I think that we disagreed most strongly on from this round of the competition. And you were a bigger fan than I was, and you sort of fought for it to have its place here on the shortlist. So tell us why you felt so strongly about it.
Yeah, I did. So what I loved about this is the way that it paints this complex picture, because we've got like this whole trans experience part of it, but we also have thrown into it just some more universal themes like seeking acceptance. This character, Margot, is constantly thinking about gaining acceptance from her art teacher, and clearly some self-image issues like dwelling on the whole unbeautiful aspect and the use of casual sex as like this escape maybe, or just a way to feel good in the moment, to not think about all these other things. I thought all of these things together painted for me a really vivid picture, really complex picture of a character, and one that really surfaces all of these themes. So it's not a story that I felt had a strong arc or a character really that changes or has something that they want that they receive at the end of the story. It's not that kind of story. But for me, here the character was really enough. It was really stood out to me.
I mean, it's almost the opposite, isn't it? It's almost like the character's not changing. They're reinforcing the problematic behaviour, like in terms of like how it's impacting them in their life. It did remind me of the character of Jules from Euphoria.
I haven't seen Euphoria.
No, so Jules is a trans character who has a similar experience, basically, has this casual sex that's quite demeaning of Jules and is sort of, it's this complex relationship with that and the impact of that. And so that was sort of in my mind reading this story.
Yeah, and a lot of the details were quite subtle. Like there is this implication that maybe the sex is violent, like, and it's only mentioned through like the purpling of her neck. But
that's all you need.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, you felt more strongly about it. I certainly thought it was a well-constructed story, and it was the kind of one that grew on me.
Yeah.
It's like when someone recommends something to you and you start to see it through different light, and that's certainly what happened here for me. But there was some really great imagery in this story. I liked, for example, the grainy image dusting her headboard with blue light. So you can just picture that scene in the darkened bedroom with the phone's light on the headboard. And another example, this to me is just such a great line, but she tolerates them at least. These used car men, stubbled, scruffy, with decent mileage despite the dented doors. Mm-hmm. So comparing men to used cars and, you know, how they're still getting mileage despite their flaws, I suppose. And I just thought that was really interesting. One question mark for me was around the cat.
Yeah.
And I sort of wondered at that, like she's got this reaction to the cat and then later is like, of course it's his cat kind of thing. And I didn't really understand what that meant.
I'm not sure if it meant something deeper, but what I did like about that was that she saw the cat and thought, oh, I hope it's not his cat, because she didn't want the cat in the room while they were having sex. That was the implication. And then when she saw him, she immediately thought, oh, no, it is his cat, because she could tell like something about him.
It's like the red flag that you just you get it, but you're not walking away for some reason.
I like that. I mean, I did like that. I'm not sure why, but you know, just that random kind of connection that felt authentic to me, because you could have that. Like that's the kind of thought that you could just have. You know?
Yeah, it's the kind of thought. It's the kind of shit girls say to each other as well when they're like dissecting relationships and stuff, just like fixating on the fact that he has a cat and just letting that represent all this other shit about his personality or whatever. So, I found it compelling as well, but I guess I didn't get what it was trying to get at, but I felt it. Yeah.
I also liked about this story that it is like it's a trans experience story, but it's also not just that, you know, it is a complete character, or you see more into the things that person's going through, and the fact that there's like a transition taking place, which is referenced as a joke, is not really what the story's about. It's just part of the character.
It's part of the character. And then that whole idea of horoscopes and stuff is part of it too. Like we hear an owl crying and things like that. That's sort of like there are bad omens here, but for some reason you're still walking up those stairs and going through that door.
Yeah, and that idea of knowing that you're doing something that's counterproductive but still doing it anyway.
Yeah, so a lot of conflict and a lot of just character sort of thinking one thing and doing another, which can be quite satisfying as a reading experience as well. So look, overall, I mean, it is well constructed. We've got a lovely sense of circularity with that use of the term unbeautiful, and certainly, as you've indicated, like really strong character development. So it absolutely earned its place here on the shortlist.
So congratulations, E.C. Heath, for your 4th place result. All right, so we're up to the podium. Podium finish. So in 3rd place is Rule of Thumb by Elise Scott. Nothing swells a man's ribs with hope like the sight of a shiny brass doorknob and a deed that says it's his. There's no elation to match that first time he pushes his key into the waiting lock and feels the slow, sure yielding of its tumblers. Mine was a real beauty, made in the French style by craftsmen up in Ames. Perfect for the door Grandpa carved when he was my age. He worked these acres his whole life. Now it was my turn. I scooped Elodie up in my arms and shouldered open the door. The hinges sang of squealing children, of calling Suey into the sunrise, of the whistle and hoot of Monday night football. Welcome home. I let the words fall into her hair as I lay her down on the bare floor. The good honest smell of paint and sweat and pine varnish muted her lilac perfume. Here began my new life as head of the family. Here, I'd be happy. Travis, I put a finger over her peach sweet lips. Hush. This was a moment to savour. I unwrapped her slowly, marvelling at how fragile she was. I would protect her, cherish her. I would not be like my father. And Elodie wouldn't be like Ma. She wouldn't flash a fuchsia lipstick grin and show my cum-stained sheets to my friends as they devoured her cinnamon rolls. She wouldn't rub herself like a cat in heat while she gazed at her community college students. She wouldn't cheat, wouldn't leave. As I moved over Elodie, she flushed pretty as a berry dipped in cream, her elegance mussed, but undiminished by my hungry touch. I tried to think of other things, to slow myself down, but it was over too soon, and I wasn't gentle. Her porcelain hand pushed at my chest, her dainty golden ring vanishing into my thick bear's pelt. Like my father, always the coarse and massive beast. Until I found him in a room as empty as this one, cloaked in the smells of paint and sweat and pine varnish. The crags of his silhouette had been freshly broken by the avalanche of his grief. You heed your grandpa's rule of thumb, son. Someday, you'll find yourself a sweet young wife. You be sure and scuff her up a bit. If you let them stay too shiny, eventually, they'll leave. His hollow eyes fixed on Ma's newlywed smile behind a cracked glass. He curled his paw closed around her. I didn't listen. Don't be like me. So when Elodie cupped my face, dark eyes vulnerable as a winter doe, I pushed her away. I pushed hard. Afterward, of course, I apologised. I always apologised. Don't know my own strength. I'd spoon cherry pie between her trembling lips, or maker's mark. Truth is, I always knew the way my hands would wear the brass off that gleaming French doorknob, little by little revealing the chipped and bitter nickel underneath. That's what made it mine.
So I hinted on social media that I only had one favourite this round, and this was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this story really resonated with me. Now, this isn't my lived experience, so it's not that. It's this looking at, I guess, the villain and looking deeper into their motivations and what factors come into play to make someone do unforgivable things. And it felt really real. And in a sea of stories where I've indicated in the long list episode where I wasn't getting that emotional resonance, this one, I got it in spades. And so it really probably hit a bit harder for that reason as well. And I understand that this story has come from lived experience and inspired by that. And that's why, I feel like that's why. And so it's an attempt to understand something that we can't understand. Like, why would someone do these things? And that comes through really strongly, I think.
Yeah, it's a great response to the anti-prompt there of like taking something that you find so unknowable and perplexing and then writing about that. And what I liked about the portrayal of this character was, the levels of rationalization and I guess an acknowledgement that it's not, the people aren't just evil, and it's not just like that's a bad person, although we can have that view of someone. It is quite an empathetic view of, well, everyone has their own motivations and their own ways that they rationalize their behavior. So for this person, they're primed by their family. And maybe there is, I mean, I'm not sure if this is a cycle of abuse type situation or just the fact that they've been given this warning, you know, that you've got to scuff them up a bit. And it feeds into maybe a natural tendency, and there's an acknowledgement that, like, yeah, I say that it's an accident, but I kind of know that it's not. So there is that complexity there and that subtlety. And what I liked about this story as well, that it is told in an active way.
And I think worth mentioning too is the opening a door prompt, the action prompt, which features as kind of like a pivotal moment in this story. So it's that traditional, you know, carrying over the threshold of a newlywed couple, or at least a couple who's newly arriving in this marital home. And so the way he pushes open the door and the interaction between those two characters when that happens is actually really critical in establishing like their relationship, the power dynamics and all of that sort of stuff as well. So I thought that was really clever. Yeah.
And also the use of the doorknob itself, like as a metaphor, I guess, for...
And it was a really powerful metaphor to me. Like it's that lovely circularity that you see in stories sometimes where something that's sort of dropped at this beginning is then referred back to at the end of a story. And for those of you who are new to flash fiction, it's really often a very effective tool is to have that, complete that circle by the end of your story. And I think this was a really good example of that, where we've set up the doorknob as a metaphor for this entire relationship and then we've answered the metaphor at the end, like we've delivered what that metaphor means, like I've scuffed it up and that's what makes it mine kind of thing. And that was very artfully done and powerful metaphor in my opinion. I think another interesting feature of this story is how it takes a really dark turn. You know, we've got this lovely setup of, it's this beautiful door and this farmhouse and, you know, it's a presumably newlywed couple coming over the threshold and then cum stains sheets.
Yeah, that came out of nowhere.
Yeah, like it's shocking. But it was a really powerful signpost of what was going to happen next in the story and the dark turn that the relationship would take. And, you know, sometimes those jarring changes can feel wrong. You know, I talk about post-single effect, like it's a different effect, right?
Yeah.
But actually the effect is that. It is how things can turn, you know, so quickly. Yeah. And so it works.
In that moment, it's that expression of jealousy that the person's feeling, like, oh, you know, cheating and cum stained sheets and all that.
That's where his head's at.
That's where, exactly, right. Yeah. So he's not thinking of it in abstract, nice terms. He's thinking it in these really charged, jealous terms.
Yeah, possessive and controlling. So, yeah, I mean, it's a powerful story and I just want to applaud Elise for going there, I guess, and for giving us like a piece of yourself, I think. And, you know, that's what this anti-prompt was all about, being authentic. And I really felt that authenticity here in this story.
Yeah, being authentic and challenging yourself as well. And I think this story took a lot of courage. So thank you and congratulations, Elise, on your third place and your prize of 500 Australian dollars. And in second place and recipient of 1,000 Australian dollars is The Taste of Pie by Alexandria Bellani. The first time I hear her laugh of golden Fibonacci spirals, I know I have to meet her. Big parties are too much colour, noise and flavour, but I'll brave this one a few minutes longer, just to learn her name. Anna. It doesn't suit her, I blurt, with her plaid miniskirt and starless midnight eyes. Anna tastes like cold canned peas. Her friends are outraged, but she throws her head back and laughs in golden ratio, and I forget that any other algorithm has ever existed. She says her full name is Anastasia. What does that taste like? I roll the syllables on my tongue, testing every letter. The salty A's and sweet S's, the savoury N and spiced T. I is my least favourite vowel, so tart and overbearing, but in her name, it softens, like butter. Brown sugar, I answer, and pie. I don't clarify the number, because at least pie is a flavour normal people can imagine. She leads me round the room, introducing me to everyone and asking what each name tastes like. I don't mind performing party tricks with her hand in mine. Over hours, I tell her Caroline tastes of old lemonade, Chase of plums, and Sasha of ice scraped off the inside of a freezer. She tells me she's a jazz musician and that she loves artists. She winks, saying I must be one to have an imagination like this. I don't know how to say I'm not, and I don't. That even now, I'm running the numbers on our chances, and she's too beautiful, and I'm too weird. This doesn't end with happily ever after. I spare my heart and slip out while she's getting us drinks. She finds me at work a week later. I startle when she slams open my office door with a victorious "Aha!" cracking the air with gold lightning. Coffee flies out of my freak in the spreadsheets mug as I throw my arms wide to cover the whiteboard of partial derivatives at my back. As if I can stop her from seeing how poorly suited we are. As if it matters after I ran away. She doesn't look at the whiteboard though when she calls me an asshole. The word is a platform-booted kick to the sternum. She says she's never been ditched before and needs to know what happened. She wants answers. The only kind I'm good at is numbers. So I write up the odds of two people finding each other, falling in love, staying in love, especially someone like me. Someone who knows the numbers on the whiteboard are written in blue marker, but sees rainbows. Someone who approached the girl with the golden laugh and told her that her name tasted like peas. Blue marker squeaks out lavender threes, navy eights, and crimson zeros before her hand halts mine. Run these numbers, she whispers. Then she kisses me, and it's music, and sugar, and pie, and gold, and flawless Fibonacci spirals.
What a charming story. I found that one really beautiful. And I think it was probably the one that we most easily agreed on, that it belonged in the shortlist. And it's one of two romances that have made the shortlist. And what's compelling about it is that character, right? It's a unique character. And we had a look at synesthesia in the last comp. We've got another example of it here. We have a character who, I don't know whether they're on the spectrum or whether, you know, they've got something else going on with them that makes them feel weird and other. But I think that does tap into the zeitgeist a little bit. You know, that's something that's very prevalent in the world, talking about, I guess, different personality traits and things like that. And so I think that's a really great place to start, a character that we see in the world.
Yeah. And you know what's funny? My wife, Sharon, has synesthesia. And
Do you know that?
No. And she's commenting that all of the colours are wrong that are in the story. So I think everyone's experience with synesthesia is different.
Oh, that's fascinating. I did not know that. Oh, I'd love to get her thoughts. I want to know what she thinks. What's the correct colours? Yeah.
Yeah, I have down in my notes for this story. This is the post-single effect story, right, where it's all pointing towards this one element of character and this idea of that synesthesia and the tasting names, right? That's what it all comes down to. And every element of the story really pushes deep into that angle. And at its centre is a charming little romance about a person who finds love despite the odds, I guess. So,
literally.
Yeah.
And I think too what this story had, and similarly with Greg's story, which we read earlier, is conflict. Yeah. Like in spades. Like he's running away from her. And how are we going to resolve that? So I think that conflict is very compelling in a story like this. Like, and in fact, there's the line where the character says, "This doesn't end with happily ever after," which of course is our expectation of every romance story. So to give us that and then to eventually give us the happy ever after as we imagine it to be is really satisfying. Presenting it as like an impossible situation and then making it happen is very effective in this genre. And of course, there's lots of little hints at this character, like the freak in the spreadsheets mug and all of that stuff. And those are beautiful details that come into play and I think are compelling and sort of subtextual as well.
Yeah, they help set up that character without you really noticing. Yeah,
exactly. So I think that was really well done. And if it wasn't clear, the title, The Taste of Pie, it's P-I, right? Yeah. And as you said, like that's really the whole way through. That's the theme of this story.
So congratulations, Alexandria, on your second place.
Well done.
All right, we are down to the winner.
So the winner of 1,500 Australian dollars, a pointy trophy, the glory, and a reminder that all of these stories will feature in this year's anthology at the end of the year.
So we're very excited to reveal that the winner of the January 2025 Not Quite Right prize for flash fiction is...
You'll Never See This Coming by Isabel Burns. The last face Paul saw was that of his daughter. Smiling, glowing, broken, within arm's reach. Still no telling where his attention went, where it had been. Probably nowhere, everywhere. Funneled, scattered around the globe, calendars, inboxes, stocks, breaking news, rage bait, repeating reels, doom scrolling first thing on a Monday morning, last thing on a Monday evening, and on every day ending in Y. Where his attention went? Probably nowhere. More so by the second. Certainly not the sodden street or the press of commuters, backpacked and coffeed up. In Paul's final moments, the world might have revealed itself anew, no longer boxed into those empty morsels of replayed novelty curated to his taste. Starved from the feed that saturated but could never satiate, his ravenous eyes might have found something of substance, had he just looked up. Something tangible, something solid, something four-wheeled and roaring into a green phase. He hadn't. That was the crux of the matter. Paul might have recognised the woman sketching portraits outside his usual cafe, the busker eager to catch his attention. He might have seen the skyscrapers around Hamilius Station, staring from windowed heights, clouds swiping by overhead. He might have heard the chorus of klaxons trumpeting in the newest casualty, screeching brakes heralding his demise as he stepped into the road. Even now he might have noticed oily rainbows shimmering past, carrying the dust of the city off the edges of the world, through a whirly grate, and into the unknown. Paul might have known his friends unedited, his ex's mind unfiltered, his own opinions unsponsored. He might have witnessed Katie's first steps unlooped, unique, precious, never to be repeated by the tip of a finger. Could he register the bus doors opening, the figures swooping in around him, see the check-marked messengers composing short-form testaments, recording his end from behind the murky, pearly fogged glass, the 11 bus to Walfer. Did he notice thousands of black eyes witnessing his incomplete crossing for the world abroad? Carrying his broken body cloudward post-haste, hastily posted via the very medium he had followed into this mess. Had he lived, he might have crossed himself on a stranger's screen, recognised himself among the real-time chaos of rush hour. A man at a junction between could and should, want and have. A forced perspective, a mind rammed back into a body of flesh and hair, windshield studded, limbs splayed, spreading a feathered halo on the wet street, with each slowing breath. His phone holding him warmly by the hand, its gaze never faltering, barely even flickering. The last face Paul saw was that of his daughter, smiling, cracked, from behind a screen she shared with a clock that would run on without him. His Katie, on the very distant fringes of his frayed consciousness, where he must have kept her far too often, hundreds of miles away, the image of her right there at his fingertips. With 5% to go on the battery.
So congratulations, Isabel Burns, on your prize-winning story.
Well done.
What a huge achievement. The competition was very fierce and you came out on top.
I would say too that this was one that I hinted at on social media as being one that took a risk that I felt paid off, and it really did pay off in this case. And it was one that we had to have a few discussions about.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I have to say the first time I read this story, the first part of the story is these sentence fragments, right? And I don't know if I've got a great relationship with sentence fragments, and but it wasn't until I kind of read it a couple of times and I guess realised what Isabel was trying to do there. And I think those sentence fragments really reflect like the nature of scrolling and just getting little bursts of information, and they reinforce that whole idea of attention span and being flicked from one thing to another, which is the core of this story. And also she's chosen a theme there that is really resonant, that a lot of people struggle with, knowing that we spend too much time on our phones and what are we missing when we're doing that.
And I think that's probably one of the things that made this story a standout is that universal fear, right? When you tap into a universal fear, then you're going to get people on board with you, right? And not only did you tap into it, you took it to its extreme. He's died because of this. And Isabel here has touched on some of those like things that we miss in a whimsical way, like the busker on the street and the clouds passing overhead and these sorts of things, but contrasted with missing your daughter's first steps and not visiting your daughter and just being satisfied with her on the other end of a screen, and these sort of more human elements that are perhaps the more problematic and important things that we miss. So it's one thing to just kind of miss the clouds overhead, and it's another to sort of just completely disconnect from your daughter. I think another thing worth mentioning is, again, that repetition and that rhythm. So we saw that in the sixth place story in this shortlist, but it's here again, like the questions that are being asked and this idea of his daughter's face smiling, glowing and being cracked or broken. Like that's, again, a lovely circular moment for those of you who are perhaps wanting to learn a little bit about how to tell effective stories. Like we've got something in the beginning that's paid off in the end. Like there's a question at the start there, like, what do you mean he's seeing her face cracked? And then that's explained and fulfilled by the end of this story to the reader's satisfaction, in my opinion. But I think those questions that are asked throughout the story, like where his attention went, these sorts of things, is that leaning into that anti-prompt side of things. Like
for sure.
it's what we don't know here. Where did his attention go? Well, he can't really justify. He doesn't even know because he's just been scrolling mindlessly. And this story did give me goosebumps. Like I did find it resonant on that level. Like when you get to the end and you're just like, oh shit, you know, and it does make you reflect on your own life. I'm certainly guilty of spending too much time on my phone at the expense of my family and loved ones. And it does make you think a little bit about that. You might be saving lives here, Isabel.
Very true.
And another thing that I think was a standout for me in this story is some of that subtext. Again, the details that were chosen that sort of had more than one meaning. And the one I wanted to call out in particular is right at the very end there. the image of her right there at his fingertips with 5% to go on the battery. Like he's dying.
Yeah.
He's got 5% to go on his battery.
Yes.
The phone does too. And I think that's a really cool place to end it, like to just give us that image of him. And he's so like, he's still connected to his phone. He's still looking at it.
That's still the point of concern is that like, I'm almost out of battery.
Yeah. And I just think that's really, really powerful. And I think that was a really good choice. So very, very satisfying ending. Even though like we don't see him die, but we know he's going to.
Yeah, but still a good visual element. And that's something that's really important in stories is being able to visualize what's happening in that story. And that's like an image that stays with you.
Yeah, and a really like relevant detail.
Yes.
And we talk about this often. Like, okay, you can tell us that someone's got hair color and an eye color or whatever. Yeah. And those things are actually mentioned. Eye color is mentioned in the story. But what are the relevant details? Like what's actually going to tell us more under the surface? And this did that.
Yeah.
So a huge congratulations. Like, yay.
Yeah, well done.
And Isabel actually made the long list in our very first comp.
All right.
So congrats, Isabel, on completing your own character journey there and coming out on top.
Yeah, and no mean feat to come out on top when the competition was really strong. And as we said in the last episode, on the long list episode, there were so many that came close that were on the cutoff and just missed out on the long list. And same thing happening with the shortlist. Like there were so many stories that were of a similar quality to the shortlist that didn't quite make it.
Which might have made it on another time.
Yeah, exactly. And so a great achievement and well done. Congratulations, you deserve it.
So yeah, your story will be appearing in the anthology at the end of the year, along with 23 other stories from our shortlist throughout the year. As I mentioned in the long list episode, our long list names will also feature in the anthology. So that's really exciting as well. And we can't wait to put that together and bring it to life. But you will also be receiving a pointy trophy with your name on it. And the trophy will look a little bit different this year. We'll have our new trophy image on it. So Isabel, as soon as you listen, as soon as you find out you won, please get in contact and we'll put you in contact with your prize money. We just don't want to spoil the surprise by contacting you too soon. And for those of you who've made the shortlist or won a wild card today, you can go onto the honour roll on the website and there'll be a new badge there waiting for you with your place on it. So show it to everyone. As we've suggested before, you could get it tattooed on your body.
You can. There's nothing stopping you.
Permanent validation. And truly, we hope that you do take this as validation. You're amazing writers. You're doing amazing things and please keep doing it. You've got a talent that should be shared.
That's right. So at some point soon, we'll also be updating the community leaderboard with the results from this comp. And if you've longlisted or shortlisted, you'll notice against your name, there'll be a little badge in the community. That may not be up there straight away. We might give that a day or two, but it will be up there soon, if not already. And like, what greater clout is there in the Not Quite Right community than having that little winner badge next to your name?
Yeah, and forevermore, people are going to be coming to you as the expert.
All right, so what's next for the Not Quite Right prize January round? We've still got Daredevils to come. Those episodes will be coming fairly shortly, probably starting in a week or two as this episode is released. And then critiques. So, well, probably in parallel, we'll be working on the critiques with the aim to get them all out before the next round starts.
So the good thing about that is that they come out just in time for you to sort of take stock of those points for the next round if you plan to compete. And we hope you do.
And a reminder, like if you had fun this round, we've got plenty of comps this year. There's the April comp, which tickets are on sale for now. And there's also the Not Quite Right prize for Flesh Fiction, which is running all the way up until August this year. So just go to the website and check that as well. That one is free. And you can win a prize from a pool of $1,000 plus a lot of other fun prizes. So check that one out of the website.
Yeah, and we had a couple of romance writers trying it for the first time, so I don't see why not. We could have some writers trying out erotic fiction for the first time and
Get
succeeding.
yourself out of your comfort zone and you might be surprised at what you can achieve.
So once again, congratulations, huge congratulations to our shortlist. We're very proud of you. And we hope that you bask in the glory, crack the champagne, whatever it is, because these moments of validation in the writing world are few and far between. But we see you, we see what you've done, and we think it's amazing.
Absolutely. So that is it for the announcement. And until next time, right on.
Right on.
Thank you for listening to Not Quite Right. If you'd like to reach us via email or follow us on social media, you can find all the links on our website, notquiterightpodcast.com. That's WRITE. And if you enjoyed the show, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcasting app.
Something doesn't seem quite right.
Just probably stop for a little snack break, but may I offer you an Easter egg?
Sure.
I thought in honour of Tabby.
Oh, right, yeah.
We're in Easter egg eating season. I mean,
well, it is February.
exactly.
So, yeah.
So therefore, it has begun
Yeah.
the purchasing of discounted Easter eggs.
The purchasing of Easter eggs for Easter and then the eating of the Easter eggs way before Easter and then having to buy more Easter eggs for Easter.
Exactly. So please.
Thank you. I have to question the origin of these Easter eggs. Did they come from a certain bunny?
I didn't have to work for these.
You didn't have to work with those.
No.
No bunnies were pleasured in the procurement of these eggs.